Good morning and welcome to the May 14th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. I am Blanny Miller, Chair of the Commission. We have a brief agenda today, including two rezoning cases, one in old business that is requesting deferral and one in new business that is requesting deferral. So I expect we'll move efficiently today. Moving on to public comment, we start the meeting with an opportunity for the public to comment on an item not contained on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on an item not on the agenda today? Seeing none, we will move on to committee reports. We have two items from our committee of the whole meeting on April 25th. Commissioner Otwell served as acting chair for that meeting, so we will turn to him for the committee report.
Thank you, Chair Miller. We discussed three items. The first two were bundled, CP 623 and Z 5923 were around a rezoning request for a church on Bull Run Road. For the comprehensive plan amendment, the committee recommended unanimously to approve the request to remove a segment from the street plan. And for Z 5923, the committee recommended unanimously to forward without recommendation for further discussion at the full commission meeting. There were going to be some questions about updated conditions. Zoning justification was a question. I believe there was a question about the street connection and perhaps a few other things that I forgot to get in my notes that commissioners still wanted to discuss in full before making a recommendation. For TC 423, the text change around digital billboards, we began a discussion with industry representatives and supporters of the change, giving an overview of the requested change and the unique situation of the discussion not being a formal part of the policy process, but rather a pre-discussion to give staff some guidance in how to proceed. We also got a recommendations and comments from President of Scenic North Carolina and other concerned citizens that were in opposition to the text change. That's where we are.
Thank you very much. So on the two items related to Blue Run Lane, the CP 623 and Z 5923, the commission has already received a full staff presentation, applicant presentation, and heard from the public. So, but I would like to turn to staff to hear about any updates or changes to the case since our last meeting.
Thank you. So for CP 623, there have been no changes since the last meeting. So I'll jump right into Z 5923, which has had some changes since the last meeting. So just a reminder, this is a rezoning request at 6900 and 6950 Blue Run Lane to rezone from conservation management and agricultural productive to conservation management and residential 10 with conditions. We did receive signed conditions in time to be considered today. I've highlighted changes to the conditions that were discussed last time, and we'll run through them and then talk a little bit about that, how that impacts consistency. So the first condition limits uses on the property to civic uses, including but not limited to a place of worship. And so this condition is now eliminating the potential for residential use on the property. So because of that, conditions 2 and 3 have been removed, as those are speaking to residential building types. Condition 2 remains pretty much the same. It had some corrections to the UDO reference, but this is a condition that states that the future development will not be required to connect to Peace River Drive street stub, as otherwise required by the UDO section for street stubs. A letter of justification was included in the submittal by the applicant. That was included in your board doc backup packet, and that was provided by a traffic professional. The third condition requires the construction of a greenway connection from Blue Run Lane west through the site, connecting to the Peace River Drive street stub. The fourth condition provides that a new public street will be constructed connecting Blue Run Lane to Ranger Grove Way, which is that easternmost street stub at the southern property line. The fifth condition requires that any outdoor or parking lot lighting will be full cut off. And the sixth condition requires that dumpsters should not be located within 100 feet of any adjacent residences and then screened from residences as well. Here's Exhibit A, which accompanies the Greenway condition. And here's Exhibit B, which accompanies the new street construction condition, showing the proposed alignment there. Here's a look at the change in entitlement with these new signed conditions. Maximum units has been amended to 0. This change does make the request consistent with the rural residential future land use designation. The civic use is a permitted and a recommended use within that rural residential future land use designation. So it's consistent with the future land use map, but still inconsistent with the comprehensive plan overall, remaining inconsistent with those highlighted policies from before that have to do with staff concerns about connectivity. So we did receive signed conditions to be considered today. Your deadline for action is June 24th.
Thank you very much. We have already received public comment on this at the committee of the whole meeting, but just so I can get a sense, by show of hands, is there anyone in the public who would like to speak on any updates to this case or other items not previously discussed? Looks like maybe we have one. Anyone else? Okay, then, without objection, I would like to add 3 minutes to the agenda to discuss any updates to this case.
Thank you, Ben Kuhn with Ragsdale Liggett on behalf of the applicant, the Raleigh North Christian Center. I'm here with Shannon Parker and Dr. Chapman, and we also have our engineering consultants within V5, Jonathan, and we also have Ben Jetta as well here. They are Ben Jetta was the author of the memo that you have in your packet, which I think clearly outlines that the alternative connections here are both safe and reasonable and appropriate, that safety is secured and the interconnectivity is sufficient for the area in terms of capacity and everything else. If there are any questions that you wish to have as to me or to our consultants here, please let us know. The major change in the conditions, as you see, the discussion at the very end of the committee of the whole meeting was, well, what do we do if this is residential? We would like to make sure that if it's developed for residential, that the connections be made. And, you know, instead of trying to bifurcate and have a confusing mix of conditional language and this or that or the other, when residential is not going to be built there. And we know that. Not because it's they won't do it, it's because it can't be done. Others have looked at it to try to do it. In fact, we have a client that's developing all the property on the other side of 540. They looked at it and bought it from the same owners and didn't buy this site because they don't want to build homes on it. So it's not going to be residential, so deleting residential is not an issue. It is going to be a civic use, a church use, and that's what we're plain and clear about that. And so if there are any questions, let me know, but I think from a consistency standpoint, if you look at this as a context-sensitive road design, it does everything you want. It connects the roads, it connects the greenways, you have multimodal transportation options available at the site, not just for the site, but also for the surrounding community. It is in a somewhat isolated area, so having that multimodal approach, I think, is good for everybody, not just, and with that, I'll just stop and let Shannon tell you a little bit about what their mission and goal is for the next 1 minute.
Thank you, Ben. Well, good morning. I'm Shannon Parker with Raleigh North Christian Center. Just such an honor to be here. So, Raleigh North Christian Center, we're now marking our 24th year in ministry as a church here in Raleigh. It was actually launched from my family's living room. So, my father, Dr. Chapman, is the pastor, and we have been able to see tremendous growth and change. We're a multi-generational church. We serve the community in many ways. Primarily, it's because of the love that's in the space that we have. But we have 47 ministries, or in the context of maybe your world, programs. And so we do military outreach. We help those who are veterans, whether they're members or not, access resources so they know what they can have the community support as well. We also have adopted Wilburn Elementary School, which serves 681 students. It's a Title I school, and also the faculty members. We were just there for teacher appreciation. And we work in the community with Oak City Cares. We just served 499 individuals who are hungry. So for us, this is important because we want to make sure that we can continue to make a difference in our city. And we believe that faith is essential and that it brings hope. And we're so grateful for your help helping us to build out the future for our church.
Thank you so much. Just so I can be sure, is there anyone else in the public who didn't get a chance to speak? Okay, then with that, we will bring it back to the table for questions from commissioners. I may start off with questions from staff. I have in my notes at the Committee of the Whole, we were interested in seeing this rezoning case limited to a place of worship. Could you provide more information about the impact of saying that it could be any civic use, including but not limited to a place of worship?
Civic uses would include like other government buildings like this building or a place of worship, community centers, things of that nature. I can turn to the UDO and get you a more specific list to read out, but that is kind of the family of uses that are allowed.
Thank you. Then maybe it's a question for the applicant. Could they, Mr. York?
Well, I think that condition came about partly through a discussion I had with the applicant's
Okay.
attorney. And so, because they were looking for if it was something that wasn't, the use was something that was not entitled to relief from making the condition under the UDO, what kind of a condition would guarantee that being put in? Since their only use was going to be civic, and most, if not all, the civic uses grant relief from having to make the road connection. I suggested if they were truly committed to a civic use, to add that condition and remove the prohibited use condition. So you can blame it on me, but I think basically now I think we're pretty comfortable that if the zoning's approved and the property's developed, it's going to be developed for use that the UDO would otherwise already give relief to for making that connection that's addressed in the comp plan amendment, if that makes sense. I thought that was easier and not as muddy, given their intended use.
Thank you. I think that answers that, so thank you. And then the one other question about the no parking signs, that was in a condition, and we talked about potentially removing that and instead moving it to site plan. I wasn't sure if that was in a draft condition or if that was, what is the status of that no parking sign?
Yes, that was in the draft condition and that was removed in the signed conditions.
Fantastic, thank you. So then I'll open it back up to the rest of the Planning Commission for more questions and discussion. Yes, Commissioner Otwell.
Be ready to make a couple motions? If
Yes.
there's no more discussion?
Thank you.
All right. For CP 623, I move recommendation of approval for the comprehensive plan update.
There's a motion and a second. All those in, any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Do we have a motion about the rezoning case?
Sure. For Z5923, I move to recommend adoption of the proposed consistency statement dated May 14th, 2024, contained in the agenda materials, and to recommend approval of the zoning amendment This recommendation also includes an amendment to the 2030 Comprehensive Plan to the extent described in the adopted consistency statement.
Thank you. We have a second. And any further discussion? Okay, by show of hands, all those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. That motion passes unanimously as well. And thank you all very much. Yes. Then moving on to old business. Rezoning case Z8322 at Hillsborough Street and Turner Street. There is only one item on the agenda today, and the applicant has asked to defer this case until our May 28th meeting to allow for the applicant to submit submit signed conditions. The deadline for action is May 25th, so we would also need to ask council for an extension. A 45-day extension would get us through the end of June. Is there any discussion, or is anything for staff to add on this case?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion from the public on this case? Okay, seeing none. Any discussion on this topic or questions from the commissioners? Then with that, I'd like to entertain a motion to request a 45-day extension on this case from council.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Commissioner, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Are we deferring, obviously we're deferring it, do we have a date specific we want to defer?
If that motion is granted by council, then we would like to defer this case until May 28th.
Okay. Just wanted to get that out.
Yes,
Thank you.
for the record. If it is not granted by council, then it would move to council with no recommendation. Thank you. Moving on to new business, item E1, rezoning case Z7022 at Glenwood Avenue. The applicant has asked for a deferral of this case until our June 25th meeting to allow for more time to coordinate with the HOA. And the deadline for action is June 13th, so we do not need to request an extension from council at this time. Any further discussion from staff on the item? June 25th. Or the general, or the public? Then seeing none, I'd like, yes.
Just make one quick comment.
Yes.
It would, since I think the representation for the applicant is here, it would be great to see a little bit more in the summary of issues from the neighborhood meeting. It was a pretty large meeting and a very short summary of issues.
Thank you. Noted. Would you like to, that might be a question? Sure. Respond? Thank you.
Good morning, Isabel Maddox, 3700 Glenwood Avenue, Suite 500, 27612. I'm here on behalf of Glenwood Lane LLC, and this case is old. I acknowledge that, and I'm sorry for the length of time it's taken. But the problem is, in order to redevelop this property, we have to both revise some restrictive covenants that are recorded and rezone. And so we started the process with the rezoning, and it's just been very protracted. We actually had our neighborhood meeting during the early days of COVID when we had them all online. There were a lot of neighborhood issues. We have been working very closely with the neighborhood and their council, Josh Hanson, who we texted this morning. Oh, he's here. I told him he really didn't need to come, but he's here. And we have we had a couple of meetings recently and agreed on some terms that we're going to go forward. And then the next couple of weeks, we need to put certain things in the conditions. The conditions or the issues relate to Lake Ann and stormwater issues there. There's also the extension of Winchester Drive that is going to be a parallel. It is a parallel street to Glenwood, but there needs to be a connection in this area. So there's some issues related to how that road is constructed and buffers and that kind of thing. We have sort of one section that's going to be a apartment-type building with some retail on the ground floor on Glenwood, and then a townhouse group, further interior to the neighborhood, and some issues related to buffering the neighborhood, how Winchester is addressed, and protection of Lake Ann, I would say, are sort of the general things that we're talking about. And so anyway, Josh can speak and give you his perspective, but I think we're, in a pretty good place is just really getting the details into conditions and potentially another agreement. And There's some payments that are going back and forth to address some things. There's a long history with this project, which is why it's taking so long to get through this. But I think we're getting close, and so I think my hope is that by June 25th, we can get the things and come back to you with some better conditions that reflect the agreement of the parties. So,
It sounds like you want the deferral for exactly the thing that I was hoping to get, which was more perspective from the
Yes.
neighborhood. So,
yes.
so thank you.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion at the table or questions from commissioners? Then, seeing none, I would like to make a motion to defer this case until our June 25th meeting. Do we have a second? Commissioner Fox has seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Then moving on to approval of the minutes. Our first item is approval of the minutes from our Planning Commission meeting on April 23rd, 2024. One thing that we have talked about is whenever there is a split vote, if we could put that into the minutes, the reasons for that, and we could review, especially those that voted in denial of a motion, that people could review how that's drafted and approve it themselves, so that otherwise, often when I'm presenting these cases at council, they ask me to summarize your issues, and I think no better way to do that than to have it come from you directly. And reflected in the minutes. So if you would indulge me in that way, there are a few cases in the minutes that have a split vote, and it may take a moment to refresh, but I was going to see if we could get, add to the minutes the reasons why we have some of the votes in opposition into the minutes. So one of the first items is TC, it's the minutes on page 2, TC 623, streetscape plans and custom signage plans. In that case, the vote was not unanimous. It was 5-2 with Commissioners Fox and Otwell opposed. And there is some note in here about some of the concerns. I was going to see if you have an opportunity to review those and perhaps give some additional context to the vote in opposition.
Sure, I'd be happy to try to say or I could send an email, whatever would be the easiest. I could do both. So I'll say that my objection was that streetscape plans are large planning efforts that are tied closely to rezoning cases and should be considered by the Planning Commission. And I'll write that down and send it in the email.
Okay. So with that change, streetscape plans are large efforts that are closely tied to rezoning efforts and should be reviewed together. Is that correct? Adding that to,
Not together, by the planning.
I'm sorry,
Commission,
excuse me, by the
you
Planning
could-
Commission.
You could bring a streetscape plan without a rezoning.
Thank you. So streetscape plans are large efforts that are tied closely to rezoning efforts and should be reviewed by the Planning Commission. Commissioner Fox, anything to add?
No, I agree with Commissioner Otwell's assessment.
Thank you. Thanks very much. And there's one other item with a split vote. That was rezoning case Z6223 at 1020 Harper Road. That case was also not unanimous with, it was 6-1, and Commissioner Otwell was opposed to that case as well.
I think they got my objection in the minutes there pretty clearly, so I'm happy with that.
Okay, great. So that can be cited as the specific reason. I believe that was all of the split votes. Just double checking. Are there any other comments or discussion on the minutes?
Move for approval.
Thank you. And that's a motion for approval with
Motion
that
for
change?
approval.
Okay. And we have a second? Thank you. Yes. Any further discussion?
Getting ahead
Nope.
of myself.
Okay. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to approval of the draft committee of the whole minutes. Are there any discussions on that item?
There's one correction I conveyed to Shanifa. The committee chair for that day was Mr. Otwell. So,
Thank you. Very helpful. Any other discussion? We have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move for approval.
And a second? Oh, Commissioner Bennett is seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That motion passes unanimously as well. Thank you. Moving on to other business, report of the chair. We have one additional meeting for this month in 2 weeks. By show, I know that it's also Memorial Day week, so wanted to check on quorum. By show of hands, are you able to attend the regular Planning Commission meeting on May 28th? If so, please raise your hand. One, two, 3, 4, 5, 6. What was the question? 7? Yes, since it's 8, 9. Excellent. All right, great. We have a.
Are you asking to be excused?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Without objection, I'll excuse Commissioner Fox from that meeting. I think that is it for me. So moving down the line. Report of the members.
The next committee of the whole meeting is on the 23rd. I will not be in attendance, so Commissioner Otwell has offered to chair that meeting. And, I'm sorry, for that meeting, we just have one item, that's digital billboards. That's all I got for today. Thanks.
Thanks.
The next text change committee meeting is tomorrow, the 15th, at 4 p.m. Can I get a quorum check? Who will be there? Members are Peeler, O'Haver, Mann, Raines. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Okay, thanks. That's it.
Thank you.
No report.
Sorry, I'm in an awkward position today. Okay. Strategic Planning Committee meeting last week was canceled due to lack of quorum. Our next meeting, after discussing with staff, has been pushed until August, so that will be August 14th at 3 p.m. Committee members include Lampman, McCrimmon, Miller, and Otwell, and myself. I'm not going to check on a quorum right now because it is May, but please just be aware that the meeting will be August 14th, and we'll check back in at the next meeting.
Thank you. Commissioner Peeler.
No report. No report. No report.
Commissioner Lampman?
I'm sorry. No.
Oh,
No comments.
okay.
No comments.
Okay, thanks very much. On to our Assistant Director.
Sure, can we just get a quorum check on committee of the whole for next week on Thursday? Mr. Raines is excused, and Mr. Otwell's going to chair in his absence. Who else will join Mr. Otwell at the meeting? 5, 6. Okay, that looks like a quorum. Thank you very much.
May I ask for excused absence? Thank you.
Thank you. And then in my report, I just wanted, I included 2 things that I thought would be of interest to you. Council has added to the 2024 omnibus, which will be in front of you pretty soon, a change to timing for submission of conditions, which would better align with agenda preparation and publication. Pushes those deadlines back more days, and also would, right now, we measure days sometimes in calendar days, other times in business days, and we're going to switch to just calendar days for all of us, for consistency's sake and simplicity. And then council continues to discuss C-9222, which is the Newbern Avenue TOD. They have adopted the TOD, most of the proposed TOD, and at this point, they have approved most of the rezoning changes proposed east of Raleigh Boulevard, and they will continue their discussion on the west side of Raleigh Boulevard at their first June meeting. So what remains is that Hungry Neck area, really close to down, like sort of, well, from downtown to Tarboro Street. So And I think you all remember we heard a lot of comment about that particular area, so they are moving slowly on that piece. But more discussion to come from them at their first June meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else for the good of the order?
I just had a question, Brian. I'm looking through your report. Was this Mordecai NCOD, is that the one that said the committee did not meet on May 8th to discuss? Because I thought that was going to the full
That's
council
at
on the
count,
7th.
so Mordecai was public hearing in front of council, was denied.
Oh, they didn't make it? Oh, it is?
They denied it, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Anything else for the good of the order? Seeing none, we are adjourned, 9:34.
Do with the rest of the morning.